Hey, what's up, Market Moose? Mike from the Moose on the Loose. You've been waiting for this one. We're going to talk about Telus. And most importantly, we're going to talk about the fact that Telus may or may not cut its dividend. So we're going to talk about the likelihood of Telus cutting their dividend in the next 2 years. So what changed? Because we've been talking about Telus pretty much every quarter. Not too long ago, I made a review. I told you that the cash flow metrics were great. And I mean, not great, but they were getting better every quarters, actually, this year. So it was a really good sign. And I told you I'm holding on to my shares. And then they kind of like threw a curveball, but right after we got analysts at JP Morgan downgrading the stock, saying that they didn't like where it's going, and then an article in the Globe and Mail saying, yeah, the dividend yield is like going high like crazy. It's not a good sign. Be careful about all of that. And then there was that kind of like panic attack. The stock price dropped again because it's not doing well, but it's even going lower, hitting like the 10-year low. So kind of like mark the imagination here. And it brings us back to the question, is Telus going to cut its dividend? And I'm going to tell you what I did with my shares of Telus not too long ago as well at the end of the show. So don't worry, you're going to have like full cover. And I'm going to explain you a little bit more about what's really happening. First, I wanted to compare Telus to your good friend Joe. Joe is a really nice guy. He's a smart one, successful, got a good business, a few side gigs on top of that, but he started to borrow a lot of money as of late. So he's doing home renovation, he bought a new car, and on top of that, he's spending a lot of money on his children. So he's paying them a very generous allocation. That allocation is being increased every year. And Joe's like super proud because he's increasing it faster than inflation. And he's like, yeah, I'm helping my kids, even though their kids, like his kids are grown-ups, they're adults, they're working, but still, he has this die with zero mentality. You know what? They need that money right now. So let's give them a higher allocation. The problem comes at one point because he starts to get a little bit more pressure. Interest rate rose, and then he's looking at his mortgage, and he's like, yeah, now it's probably time to sell a bunch of stuff on Marketplace, trying to get some money back. He sold his boat, and then he's using this to pay off some of his mortgage. And then he's like, you know what? I need a real plan now. So step number one, he says, I'm going to spend less money on home renovation. We're almost done with those, so my expenses are going to go down. Step number two, I'm selling a few furniture and stuff that I don't use or that is not really that nice in my home or whatnot. So I'm going to use that money to pay off the debt as well. And the other things he's come up with saying, well, I have those side gigs. Sometimes they're on and off, but now I feel that they're going to generate a little bit more income for me. So cash flow is going to be better in the house. And don't worry, children, I'm going to keep up with my promise with the allocation and increasing it over and over. So he has a good plan. He's not dumb. I told you, like, he has proven that he's been able to do those things for several years. But the next 2 years are going to be critical for Joe because he's still getting squeezed. He must optimize his budget. He must reduce his spending, and he has to make sure that his side gigs are actually coming up. So then he comes up saying, you know what? I do have this great plan, but I will have to put a hold on any increase to my children's allocation. So they're going to keep the allocation as is, but they're not going to increase it anymore. It's just too much pressure on his cash flow and his budget. So he's just decided to keep it a little bit low. So now if you're Joe's children, I mean, you have the choice to make, right? Do you believe in your father? Do you really think that he's going to make up to that plan and make it happen? Or not, and it's time to stop thinking about this allocation and just move on with your life. So this is how I would categorize Telus. So as you can imagine, the plan has been laid out for a while now, but they came up with that press release saying, yeah, we're going to put a hold on increasing the dividend. This is one thing I don't like, when management says one thing and then a few months later they say something else. At the beginning of the year, I told my members at DSR, not impressed with the numbers, but they're getting better. So it's kind of like, yeah, you're this close to get sold in my portfolio, but I'm going to wait until to see what's going to be the dividend growth policy moving forward. Because in 24, that was the last year where they had that guideline between 7 to 10% increases every year. So then in 25 was kind of like a big surprise what's going to come up with. And then management said, I think it was around March, but I'm not too sure. Anyway, beginning of the year, 2025. We're going to increase the dividend by 3 to 8%. And they started the year with a first increase of like 3 point something percent, and then another increase not too long ago in the latest quarter by 0.5%, for a total roughly of like 4% for 2025, which was more than I expected. I expected kind of like a 3% increase. So I was like, oh, that's kind of crazy. That's kind of good, right? And then they have this plan of, they are reducing CapEx, their capital expenditure, because the 5G technology, the expansion, network maintenance, now it's slowing down a little bit. They're not in the investment phase anymore, so they're going to continue to invest, but at a slower pace. They have additional cash flow coming from the what I called side gig in my example. So Telus Health, that is actually doing pretty well. Telus Agriculture, and then Telus International. They bought back XIT completely, brought it back in private. That was kind of like a Brookfield move, where they spun off at a very high valuation. They use a part of that as a spin-off to pay off some debt. Now they're buying back the entire business, making it private again. So they expect to generate a little bit more there. And they also expect to do some asset monetization. So selling their stake in Terrien, for example, 49% of their stake to la Caisse de Dépôt. And they use $1.26 billion of proceeds to pay down the debt. So they're actually following their plan, as opposed to what Bell did last year when they sold their stake in MLSC to Rogers, saying, we're going to pay off debt. And then 7 weeks later, it says, oh, yeah, well, forget about that. We're buying a new boat. I mean, not buying a new boat, but buying Ziply Fiber. And now we're going to need more money to invest. So they kind of like navigate here a little bit better for Telus, I think, than Bell. But the change of event of like putting a freeze on the dividend growth, I don't like that. That shows that they are a little bit scared about what's coming up next. And there's a reason for that, because even though the plan is there, the next 2 years are going to be critical, because right now the cash flow is not sufficient enough to pay for the dividends. They have to borrow money to do that. But right now, what they do instead of borrowing money to pay the dividend is they are using their drip feature. So there's a big chunk of Telus shareholders that they're benefiting from the drip feature plus a bonus to buy more shares when they receive the dividend. So instead, Telus, instead of paying it in cash, they're issuing more shares on the side to they increase the number of shares, but they don't get more money out of their pockets. They want to eliminate the drip features in 2027. So it's already in their plan, mixed with all the other factors that I've told you. And as I said, if you're DSR members, you have actually 4,000 words of analysis with charts and numbers. And I'm going to tell you like the pros and cons of each strategy and the risk. All of that is already there in the recent deep dive that I did last Friday. And for those who don't have access to DSR, well, now it's time to dig into the numbers, because this is how you will determine if you are comfortable enough with Telus or not. Because think about it. There is a possibility this plan fails and they're going to cut their dividend, and the market is already pricing a little bit forward to that. But there's also the other possibility that they do an Enbridge, because Enbridge, I mean, they're playing around with their numbers as well, with the distributable payout ratio and distributable cash flow per share. Those are like kind of like a homemade stuff, a little bit, and it's all good. I mean, I'm not trying to say that they're cooking the numbers. That's not what they do. But Telus is also do some what we call now financial engineering, right? It sounds a little bit better with the drip to pay the dividend. So maybe they're going to pull out an end bridge and then they're going to come out back strong. And then there's a great opportunity for your shares to go up. So there are the two sides of the coins here. And the answer to know if you should buy, you should hold, or you should sell will be found digging into those numbers. If you don't do it, I mean, yeah, you can still take a decision and say, oh, payout ratio is too high, I'm selling. Mind you, you should have sold like 5 years ago because the payout ratio was actually that high 5, 4, 3 years ago as well. And while a lot of you are going to go into comments and say, see, Mike, I told you I should have sold before that. Yeah, fair enough. But in 22, at the beginning of 22, when Telus was at its peak value, I mean, no one was talking about selling back then, right? So I decided to be patient, but at this time, I follow my investment rules. And since I focus on companies increasing their dividend year after year after year, when a company announces a freeze, most of the time I'm out of the door. And this is exactly what I did with Telus. So last year, upon the press release reading, I read that, I did my deep dive, and I said, you know what? I'm going for Telus. That's not for me. And it's not because I don't believe it's going to go higher up. It could, like I said, it depends on which numbers you want to believe or not. But there's a plan there, but there's a risk as well. But on my side, I want to have strong dividend growers in my portfolio. And with that freeze, it's over. So I sell and I move on and I actually replenish my portfolio with a bunch of shares of Dollarama. So we'll see how it goes moving forward. But I don't really care about being right or wrong. I care a lot more about investing with conviction and sticking to my investment rules, which is a lot more important. If you want to know how to shape those investment rules, I have a free series that will teach you exactly how to do that. You just have to register to my free newsletter at thedividendguyblog.com/newsletter. So thedividendguyblog.com/newsletters. All right, Moose, that's enough for today. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about Magna International and the price jump this year. It's up almost 20%. What is going on? We're going to talk about that tomorrow. And until then, don't forget to stay invested.